Did you know that America's official birth date might not be what you think it is? That's right, folks. While we typically mark the 4th of July 1776 as America's birthday, the plot thickens. This date is, in fact, the day the Declaration of Independence was adopted. However, it wasn't until over a year later, on November 15, 1777, that America was legally established as a new nation. On this day, the Articles of Confederation were adopted, setting the stage for the United States as we know it today. This momentous occasion marked the birth of a new political entity, separate and distinct from British rule. So, while we relish our hot dogs and marvel at fireworks each July 4th, let's not forget the crucial part that the 15th of November plays in our nation's history. So, the next time you celebrate Independence Day, remember that it took more than a year after the Declaration of Independence for America to officially become a nation. Ever heard of the Great Emu War in America? Well, you're about to. Picture this, the year is 1932 and emus are running rampant in Arizona. These large, flightless birds, originally native to Australia, had become a menace to local farmers. Their numbers so vast, they were decimating crops left, right, and center. Now you might think, why not just scare them off? Well, these were no ordinary birds. We're talking about emus, creatures known for their resilience and speed. With traditional methods failing, the authorities had to think bigger. Enter the US Army, deployed not to fight a foreign invader or quell a rebellion, but to combat an overpopulation of emus. It was one of the most peculiar moments in American history, a testament to the lengths the country would go to protect its agriculture. So, the next time you see an emu, remember that these seemingly harmless birds once waged a war against the United States. Uncle Sam, a symbol of American patriotism, has a surprising origin story. This iconic figure, often depicted in a stars and stripes suit, was actually inspired by a real person. Samuel Wilson, known to his friends and family as Sam, was a meatpacker from Troy, New York. During the War of 1812, Wilson supplied barrels of beef to the United States Army. He had a reputation for being honest and reliable, and the soldiers started to refer to the food as Uncle Sam's. As the story spread, the image of Uncle Sam began to take shape, symbolizing the government's promise to its people. Over time, artists began to depict Uncle Sam as a stern yet caring figure, embodying the spirit and values of the nation. So, the next time you see Uncle Sam, remember that he was just an ordinary citizen who became a national symbol. Did you realize that the United States had presidents before George Washington? That's right. Before the Constitution was adopted, America was governed under the Articles of Confederation, which boasted its own line of presidents. This period, often overlooked in history, had leaders who played pivotal roles in shaping the nation's future. The first of these forgotten presidents was John Hanson, serving from 1781 to 1782. He didn't command an army or lead a nation through a revolution, but he did help set a precedent for a government that would eventually be led by a president. Following Hanson, there were 7 more presidents under the Articles of Confederation, including Elias Boudinot, Thomas Mifflin, and Richard Henry Lee. Each of these leaders contributed to the foundation of the nation, paving the way for the Constitution and the presidency as we know it today. So while George Washington is often considered the first president, he was actually the first president under the current Constitution. The Statue of Liberty wasn't always green. That's right, our beloved Lady Liberty, standing tall and proud in New York Harbor, wasn't born with the verdigris patina we associate her with today. Imagine, if you will, a dazzling spectacle of shiny copper gleaming in the sunlight. That's how she looked when she first graced our shores back in the late 19th century. You see, the Statue of Liberty was constructed using sheets of pure copper, about the thickness of 2 pennies put together. Over time, the copper reacted with the air to form a layer of copper carbonate, which we call patina. This patina acts as a protective layer, preventing further corrosion and preserving the underlying copper. It took about 30 years for the statue to completely turn green, but the process began much sooner. So the Statue of Liberty's iconic green hue is actually the result of over a century of weathering. The Great Fire of 1910 was a wildfire that burned about 3 million acres in Idaho, Montana, and Washington. This inferno, a culmination of dry conditions and high winds, was not just a natural disaster, but a pivotal moment in American history. The blaze swept through towns, reducing them to ashes, and claimed the lives of 87 people, most of whom were firefighters. The fire's ferocity and magnitude were beyond anything the country had faced before. This catastrophe underscored the need for a more organized approach towards forest conservation and fire management. In the aftermath of this disaster, the United States Forest Service was established. Prior to the fire, the organization had struggled to justify its existence, but the devastation of the 1910 fire underscored the need for a federal agency dedicated to the stewardship and protection of our nation's forests. So, this devastating event ultimately led to major changes in how we manage and protect our forests. The cornerstone of the White House, laid in 1792, has been lost to history. Now, this isn't your typical misplaced the car keys kind of lost. We're talking about a cornerstone, a major architectural piece of one of the most iconic buildings in the United States. The mystery unfurls like an intriguing novel. The cornerstone was laid with much fanfare on October 13, 1792, but fast forward to today, and its location is unknown. This has sparked a flurry of theories. Some suggest it was removed during renovations. Others hypothesize that it's hidden in plain sight but has simply been mistaken for an ordinary stone. There have been numerous searches using everything from old blueprints to modern technology in an attempt to locate it. Yet despite these efforts, the cornerstone remains elusive. It's like a game of historical hide and seek, with the cornerstone always one step ahead. So the cornerstone of one of America's most iconic buildings remains a mystery to this day. Alaska was purchased from Russia for just 2 cents an acre. Now let's delve into the story of this fascinating deal. The year was 1867, and the United States Secretary of State, William H. Seward, was in the hot seat. He had masterminded a deal to buy Alaska from Russia, a land considered by many at the time as nothing more than a frozen wasteland. The purchase was widely ridiculed and even tagged as Seward's folly. However, Seward saw something that others didn't. He envisioned Alaska as a land of potential, with its vast resources and strategic position. As time passed, his vision proved to be right. The gold rushes of the late 19th century, the discovery of oil in the 20th century, and the strategic importance of Alaska during World War II turned the perceived folly into a fortune. So sometimes what seems like a folly can turn out to be a fortune. The real first Thanksgiving didn't take place where you might think. Our collective memory often places the first Thanksgiving in 1621 with the Pilgrims in Plymouth, Massachusetts. But let's rewind to a time nearly 23 years earlier, in 1598. In the arid landscapes of Texas, Spanish explorers led by Juan de Onate held a feast to celebrate their safe arrival after a perilous journey across the Chihuahuan Desert. They gave thanks for their survival, feasting on game, fish, and native plants. This moment of gratitude and communal meal predates the Pilgrims' feast by over 2 decades. Interestingly, the Pilgrims weren't even the first English settlers to hold a Thanksgiving. That honor goes to English settlers in Virginia, who held a service of thanks in 1619, 2 years before the famous feast at Plymouth. So, the story of the first Thanksgiving is much older and more complex than many people realize. Thanksgiving, it seems, has roots that spread wide and deep across the North American continent. The first capital of the United States wasn't Washington, D.C. Yes, you heard that right. The title of the first capital actually goes to New York City. In 1785, the Congress of the Confederation made its home in New York. But the city's reign as capital was short-lived. Just a few years later, in 1787, the capital was moved to Philadelphia. The city of brotherly love held the title until 1790. This was the year when a decision was made to establish a permanent capital. A location was chosen along the Potomac River, and it was named Washington, District of Columbia, in honor of the first president of the United States, George Washington. So, the story of America's capital is a journey in itself, reflecting the growth and evolution of the nation. It's a tale of change and transformation that mirrors the dynamic history of the United States itself.